Stay with that breaking news story we're tracking this hour. ANC Secretary General Ace Magashule confirming that the party spokespersons Pule Mabe and Zizikotwa have voluntarily stepped aside. Magashule was briefing the media earlier on. Our political editor Vuyo Mvoko is standing by with me in studio. Let's get straight into it, Vuyo. Interesting that the ANC says the two gentlemen have stepped aside when the statement that Pule Mabe released this morning, in fact, said that he was surprised that he had now been taken off his post and been told that he was effectively, he remains on suspension despite being cleared.
Well, he's adamant that there wouldn't have been a need for him to be consulted because he had taken leave, saying he wanted to deal with this matter. And as Aldrin St. Pierre asked there, the Secretary General of the ANC, what would have happened had these two gentlemen not voluntarily agreed to step aside, and I think an unequivocal answer actually came from the spokesperson, the acting national spokesperson, Dakwete, right at the end, who said perhaps the ANC would have done nothing because their rules and protocols are clear that a person is innocent until proven guilty. So, from a party political point of view, the ANC hasn't done anything here. They were actually helped by the fact that the two gentlemen were not there. Now, we can argue on the technicality of whether Pule, on his part, had voluntarily taken leave, and so was the case with Zizikotwa, that he's agreed that he won't be there in an official capacity as an acting spokesperson. Now, that's what helped the ANC, but it goes back to what we were saying earlier, just before that briefing started, Kathy, which is that the ANC, or those in charge, still haven't been able to muster the courage to get their to whip them into line and to get them to act responsibly. They are entirely at the mercy of the people who may be embroiled in whatever scandal of any kind.
And I suppose which explains why then Magashule would be at pains to state that even the decision for these men to voluntarily step aside does not cast aspersions on the nature of the charges that they're facing. It doesn't mean that the party sees them as guilty. But again, and you know, it's good that Aldrin St. Pierre called the Secretary General out on this particular one, that they couldn't even say in their statement what the men were facing. They called it impropriety, and it certainly is not impropriety. At
the ANC's policy conference at Galaga Estate in the run-up to the Nasrec elective conference, Ace Magashule and Supra Mahumapelo were at the forefront of the movement, the pushback movement, that actually ensured that a position that would have been a lot more effective and which would have sent a very clear signal to all and sundry that the ANC is intolerant of people who are bringing its name into disrepute. Ace Magashule was leading that pushback that said you cannot find people guilty even before there are processes. That shouldn't happen because it would play into the hands of people who are driven by agendas of those who wanted to get rid of them from the ANC. So I do not expect that same person to now say something else. But perhaps something that is crucial in this instance is the fact that with regard to both Pule Mabe and Zizikotwa, you're now talking to people who belong, so to speak, in two different factions. So it would have been a lot easier to deal with this particular, to deal with this issue in this particular instance, in that no faction will cry foul and say, so we were hard done by this decision.
On the part of the political shenanigans that is said to be playing itself out behind the two scenarios, even though the allegations that they're facing are serious, you're saying effectively it cancels out.
Yes. So no one now can stand up and say, you guys are, out to get us, and vice versa. So the situation took care of itself. And with the two not being as stubborn as, let's say, what appears to be the case with a Nomvula Mokonyane, for example. So the situation kind of took care of itself. Now, it sets a very wrong and dangerous precedent, because going forward, the ANC would have to make up its mind about how to deal with these instances. No one knew last week that Zizikoto's 10 was going to come, this week, which is what has helped this situation. And I'm sure it would have been a lot easier to deal with him had, the situation not cut both ways.
All right. So certainly if this issue then comes up again with a different member of the party, we could find ourselves in the same position, but perhaps a bit more difficult for the party to navigate.
In fact, this instance makes it even more difficult. If you ask me, this is perhaps the one opportunity the ANC had now that it can actually appeal, to both factions, to say, beyond this point, this is how we should deal with this. And in my view, President Cyril Ramaphosa actually must take the bull by the horns. All
right. The other issue that has came up prominently in that media briefing was the one around black professionals and where the party really stands. Interesting that Magashule would spend so much time on an issue that his statement seemingly had handled and taken care of, because those comments, at least as explained, were never made or were taken out of context.
See, there again, it tells you about the state that the ANC is in. It is not in a particularly good state right now. How does the Secretary General of such a big movement, who is the de facto CEO of the ANC, go out and issue a statement, when a statement is issued in his party's name without them having done the most basic of things, and that is to verify your information? It tells you from the onset that he was driven by factionalism, because had he, if he was dealing with this issue, the way a person who was the interest of the ANC at heart would have done, the most obvious and simplest thing for him to do would have been to call a Pravin Gordhan, to call a Senzo Mchunu and say, comrade, did you do this? He didn't do that. He believed whoever told him that this is what happened. Why would the Secretary General of the ANC be so prone to believing someone else, in even like ignoring the most obvious thing, which was to say, comrade, did you or did you not say this? Now he had to make an about 10 when the two gentlemen pointed out to him that they had never actually uttered the statements that were attributed to them. Even more evidence that all is not well within the ANC a couple of months before an election. That doesn't bode well for an organization that wants to lead this country.
Well, I tell you what, it's not just the domestic affairs that are on their mind. The situation in Venezuela also seemed to have occupied quite a bit of that meeting. And of course, they've come out in full support of the presidency there, Nicolas Maduro's presidency, and even sending a delegation to go.
Well, the Traditional Liberation Forces have clubbed together on this one, and they've been consistent, truth be told, because as much as a lot of people, I think correctly, are raising the issue of you cannot allow people to starve when there are other people who can, around the world, who can help them. But fact of the matter is that the most powerful forces in the world do use aid and other such good gestures to actually drive their own agendas.
All right. Well, then let's leave it there for now. Some insightful analysis from our political editor here, Vuyo Mvoko.